That's not a good thing at all. Not a good thing at all. How many of you know how to put on tire chains? 1, 2, 3. You probably get it done. And you don't drive fast with tire chains, do you? You see them trying that stuff when you get these really crazy winter events here in North Texas. I will say that the transportation department does a much better job than they used to do. So that's what I want you to think about when you go through these slides or see these slides calling scene size up, scene survey. How does it apply to this emergency we have going on right now? Check core temperature. Once again, that's not with the tympanic. That's not with the laser pointer thing. Core temperature, you're probably not able to do it because you're not doing it rectally. You can insert the thermometer in the rectum to do it, but that's what they mean by core temp. Warm humidified oxygen, ding ding. Treating a hypothermic patient with oxygen, it should be warm and humidified. Humidity carries more heat. And how do I warm it? Well, one way I can do it is sandwich it between 2 hot packs. That's about the only way I know how to warm it, because it's going to get cold just coming out of the cylinder. Use that radiator. How many times do I defibrillate? Once. How do I handle them? Carefully. So the test question I seen was, you're pulling someone from the submersion incident, like a lake or a pond. What position do you pull them out, vertically or horizontally?
Wait, what was the question again?
You're pulling a victim of a submersion, icy, hypothermic from a lake or a pond. Do you pull them out vertically or horizontally? If you're using the rule of handling them gently, are you going to put a board under them and lift them up on their back, or are you going to reach over and grab their arms and pull them out?
No.
Okay. Horizontally. Isn't it a silly ass way to ask the question? Well, that was the question. There you go. Rough handling of a hypothermic patient may cause slow, weak heart to fibrillate. If there is associated trauma, blood clotting may be overly aggressive or underly aggressive, but do not expect bleeding to be controlled easily in a hypothermic patient, which goes back to why we treat shock by do not allow hypothermia. It messes with the clotting factors. Let's take this bullet point right here. Exposures may be short or prolonged. Now, I told you hypothermia can set in August, depending on the situation. What clues could I use to help determine how long they've been on the ground or in the bed or without heat or without air? Use your investigative skills to figure that out. If the woman fell in the cellar yesterday and she's still laying in water today, I don't need a core body temperature to tell me she's hypothermic. It was funny to listen to those guys talk about how hard it was to get her out of the cellar on a backboard. Do you think she was rough handled? Mm-hmm. Probably. So get help there if you need the help. Okay. Management. Remove clothing. Dry blankets. Good. Handle gently. Do not massage. Okay. Do not use stimulants. Don't try to wake them up with an ammonia capsule. You shouldn't even have one on the ambulance anyway, but almost all ambulances do, and I don't know why. But don't try to arouse them by deep sternal rubs. You shouldn't even do a sternal rub. Realize that they're cold and not going to respond, and run with that. It all says the same thing at this point. Any questions on the cold before we go to the hot? None? So the heat emergency will probably take us to the end of the day. We know how heat's transferred. We know what the role of humidity does to the human body and its ability to get rid of heat. And you probably have heard these terms before: heat exhaustion, heat cramps, and heat stroke. So let's try to categorize them. Let's start with the easy one. Heat exhaustion. Can anyone define it in the term that you know it best? Heat exhaustion. Do what? Tired of being out in the heat. I like that. That's a pretty good definition. What goes along with that? Profuse sweating, nausea, sick, just feel like you're going to throw up.
Low blood pressure?
Yeah, could be some low blood pressure, lightheadedness, dizziness. With heat exhaustion, you're losing fluids and electrolytes. Let me follow up. Does the body temp stay within normal range in heat exhaustion? The answer is yes. The answer is yes. The body temp is still 98.6. You've just lost fluids and electrolytes. So when you hear the term heat exhaustion, think fluids and electrolytes. Go back to my rule. What do they need? Fluid and electrolytes. What's one else that might really, really, really help them? Get them out of the environment. Hopefully your ambulances are cool these days. Mine were not. They seem to always be hot. Putting them in my ambulance back in the day would be detrimental to their health, not adding to it. Remove from the environment. Are they still awake and conscious? Okay. So what do they need? Fluid and electrolytes, cool environment. Can I give them fluid and electrolytes? As an EMT, can I give them fluid and electrolytes?
Water.
Half-strength electrolyte solution is the proper answer. Also known as diluted Gatorade or Powerade. Not coffee, not a beer. Damn it.
Not a banana bag?
We don't have them as an EMT. Yes, as a paramedic, I can give them a lactated Ringer's bag, but I still don't have all the electrolytes I need. Even if I gave them saline, it would help. And that's what I'm going to do once they're unable to control their airway or follow commands. When we get to the next two, it's ALS for those things. Half-strength electrolyte solutions. And they say half-strength because if they drink a lot of full-strength Gatorade, it may make them nauseated. So always be aware of nausea and vomiting. You have just managed heat exhaustion. Removing them from the environment. Give them what they need. So what do you think's a little bit more worse than that? When you've lost the salts and the electrolytes and the fluids to the point you're now heat cramping, heat cramps, all due to the loss of fluid and electrolytes as well. Is the body temp still within range? Yeah. But the muscles are now being affected. Can I give them half-strength electrolyte solutions?
If they're still conscious.
As long as they can control their airway and follow commands. So what's the bad boy of the heat emergencies? Heat stroke. Here's where there are some bad statements or misinformation. Heat stroke is when there is a neurological deficit. The brain is being affected. The body has lost its ability to cool off. The body's attempt to cool off cannot override the amount of heat that's being produced in the body or around the body, thus leading to neurodeficits, stroke-like symptoms.
They stop sweating, right?
There's a misnomer. There is a misnomer there. If your patient is not sweating anymore, that's not the definition of heat stroke, but it is the definition of bad. Because you just remove one of the primary mechanisms to cool the body. The danger in that, Billy, is by looking at someone who is profusely sweating and saying it can't be heat stroke because they're still sweating. Your mechanisms may be at full tilt 100% trying to cool you off, but if they're not working, your body temp could just continue to climb, right? It's like you going out on your car and you want to drive 80 miles an hour, but you got a heavy trailer on your truck. You may lay it on the floor and give it all you got. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to make it to 80 miles an hour. You with me? So in the human body, we're full sweating, we're panting, we're doing everything, but the temp's still climbing. So in heat stroke, is the body temp normal? No, it's high. We call that hyperthermia. Do they get half-strength electrolytes? No, they got the neuro deficit. Jonah, do I need ALS there for those IV solutions? The answer is yes. Do I still remove them from the environment?
Yes.
We don't pour cold water on them.
You can actively cool them, but you don't want them to shiver, because shivering will do what?
Heat 'em
It'll
up.
heat them up. Yes, I would apply cold packs, but I wouldn't take a 5-gallon bucket of water and pour it on
Would you
them.
do it the same as the
Yep.
other one? You
Use
put
the
in
use the laws of heat transfer. Remember, it's a two-way street.
Yep.
Use the laws of heat transfer. I worked for one of those ambulance services that was less than professional, because that's the only job I could get because of my age at the time, and I took it, and I responded to a heat emergency. It was hot when I thought I was having a heat stroke time I got there, because our ambulances just didn't cool very well. And up on scene, I found a gentleman on the porch unconscious. Dry, Billy, he was dry. He was unconscious. It was one of those August heat index 108 kind of days. Touching him, making contact, he would not respond. He had a pulse, but he would not respond. He was dry. He was hot to the touch. I didn't use a thermometer, but he was hot to the touch. What did he have?
hypothermia.
Hyperthermia. I could classify it as heat stroke, could I not?
Yes, sir.
So there were 3 or 4 of us on scene, and I remember grabbing him by the arms, and somebody grabbed him by the legs, and I said, let's put him on the stretcher, let's get him in the ambulance. In other words, let's get him off the porch, let's get him out of the environment. One of those crew members went back to the supervisor and told on me because I didn't take C-spine precautions.
Yeah, so that's what I was about to ask you. With the falling in the cellar, was it still important that they took all those precautions, or should they have?
They
gone
thought it
out?
was.
But
They thought it was.
Was it?
But did it overrule?
I would think not.
It doesn't.
Okay.
It doesn't. We were always taught it would. And that's the moral of my story here. You know, we were so ingrained that, oh, fall unknown, you better take C-spine precautions. I just realized this guy's hot and he's unconscious and he needs out of here immediately, and we picked him up and put him on the stretcher.
So,
I didn't get in any trouble once I had the opportunity to explain myself. I said C-spine precautions weren't warranted there. I didn't even know if he fell. Well, he could have fallen. Well, he could have done a lot of things, but I do know things for a fact. He was hot, and he needed out of the environment, needed the IV, and needed transport immediately because his brain's actually going down. So what good would it have been for me to spend 15 more minutes putting him in full spinal package of an unconscious individual? Crickets, you know, it's like, okay, you can go.
yeah.
Okay, I
So do
can
you
go.
think that's what they should have done? They should have just carried her out?
Yes,
on the back?
hell yes.
Okay. That's good to know.
I'm not saying cause further harm,
Yeah, yeah.
but we're not going to jack her around down there trying to get her on a backboard and packaged up, carrying her out of the cellar vertically, probably on this backboard.
Yeah.
A fireman carry, or I don't know how big she was or what size the opening was, so I'd be guessing at that point. Just how about just a blanket and carrying her out in a bundle? Remember, the most injurious thing you can do to the spine, if it is injured, is log roll.
Do you get her naked there or in the next?
Probably as soon as we got out of the water. Yeah, as soon as we got out of the water. And it wouldn't hurt. It wouldn't hurt anything to cut those clothes off right there in the water, and to do an actual good assessment to make sure she's not impaled or bleeding or bruising or some injury I can't see that would need to be addressed before moving her.
So if
But
you did cut her clothes off and you see a bunch of bruising around like her hip or something after that.
yeah, that would change my method of extricating her from that if there's some instability to the hip, because that would cause further harm if that leg got all jangled or dropped or fell off to the side. backboards work good for moving people, but we also have a rescue tool called a Stokes basket, which is a patient litter, if you will. It's kind of like a backboard, only it has sides and ends, and you can strap them down in it. You could pick them straight up out of a hole if you needed to. Those are extrication tools. It's called a Stokes basket, Stokes.
Are those like standard on an engine? Or-
Yeah, they should be. If you got any form of rescue at all, they should be on a fire engine.
Okay.
Should be. They float. It's a great way to get them out of the water. You get them strapped in it. You guys know your backboards well enough now to know you're not picking one up vertically. But I can strap someone in a Stokes basket, tie a rope, and pull them up the side of Denison Dam. It's hilarious. As sad as it is, it's hilarious to watch a couple of paramedics or EMTs try to put someone on a backboard and carry them up the side of Denison Dam when there's been a car rollover. Especially on the rocky side, the water side, in the middle of the night with ice blowing. If you've not done that, and I don't expect a lot of you have, it will freak you because you can't see the water. You don't know where it's at. You think you're going to step in it any time, and you think you're going to die because you're going to fall in this damn cold water. And it's like, no, it's just a Stokes basket works so well. It's got handles. 6 or 7 of you can carry it. You can use a rope, pull it up. You could actually tie it to the winch of an apparatus and pull it up, and then your EMTs, instead of having to pull it and carry it, they walk by it just to stabilize it. But communication's got to be what? But that's rescue. And for the purpose of a National Registry exam, you've got to recognize the need for a rescue. That's called rescue awareness. The step above rescue awareness, which all of you should be trained to, is rescue technician. That's the people who actually go out and do it. So that's why I'm not training you on a Stokes basket, but I'm making you aware that there is a Stokes basket to extricate these people with.
Do you learn rescue at fire school, or do you learn that at your department?
Fire school. Should.
Yeah.
Should. Now, there are subspecialties to rescue. There's farm rescue, there's hazmat rescue, there's confined space rescue, there's high angle rescue, there's water rescue. I don't like any of them. If I chose anything, it'd be farm rescue. I don't want to go 60 foot down in a trench and try to get someone out. I don't want to go in a confined space. Oh, hell no. We had to practice that. Take your air pack off and push it in front of you because the pipe got so small you had to be like this. You really have to not freak. Because you're not going anywhere if you do. Somebody's going to drag you out because you're having an anxiety attack. No, not for me. Stepping off the edge of a water tower to go down a rope when you can't see the edge, I'm out. I'm not afraid of heights, but I'm not turning loose either. So I don't like any of it. That's why I'm in here. That's why I'm in here. That's a young man's sport, or woman. Whatever floats your boat, do it. Okay. Hypothermia, by definition, 101 or higher. We know all this. You should by now. This one right here is what gets our high school football teams in August when they start doing the 2-a-day practices. And there's been so much controversy over that. There's been some rules out, both local and at state level, of how often you can practice, how long you can practice, what the temperature is when you can practice. Some of you may be much more familiar with that than I am. Are you aware of some of that, Aiden? What are some of those?
I mean, I've been out of school for a minute, but like during the summer, we couldn't practice from anywhere from noon to 3 o'clock or something like that. But it doesn't make any sense because it's hotter in the evening than it is during midday.
Mm-hmm.
But they think because the sun's right at peak that it's
Mm-hmm. Well, they made those rules for a reason. That's because people were dying, at least have damage because of being in those hot environments. But what happens is, and I'm not poking at you here, but you sit around on summer break, sitting under the air conditioning, and all of a sudden it's time to go to football. I know you're going to get sick of hearing old man stories, but think about the high school boys who hauled hay all summer. Well, there's been a debate or a topic with my wife and I that says, I think one of the things, Gus, you talked about testosterone the other day, and Garrett, and Starrett, and y'all were talking about that stuff. There was a time when someone your age or younger in high school would haul hay all summer, and that was with square bales stacking on a trailer. I don't know if any of you have ever done that. I buy a couple of hundred square bales a year, and it's on that trailer, and it's just here to the barn and stacking it. And I'm like, oh my God, just miserably hot in those barns. And I know for a fact my father done it and his buddies, and 1,000 bales a day. I'm doing 100. How in the hell? And I always think about that. And in my old barn, which is over 100 years old, there's a window up there. And that window is for throwing hay into the barn. And I talked to my 90-year-old neighbor who saw men throw hay in that window. And I'm like, so did they take it with their hands and throw it? And he's like, oh, you should have known old George or whatever his name was. And I said, well, I should have, I guess, but I wasn't around in the early 1900s. He said he would use a pitchfork and stab it in the side of the square bale and throw it in there with a pitchfork. He said he had some big old hands. I bet he did. I bet he did. That's the old man you don't want to get a hold of you. Acclimation. That's all they knew to do. There was no electricity in that area in the night. It didn't occur in my rural area until the 1950s is when electricity hit. No electricity, there was no air conditioner. Can you imagine living in North Texas, Southern Oklahoma, right down without air conditioning? It'd suck, wouldn't it? How many people would die if the grid went off in the middle of August, like truly went off? A lot. Young and old. Young and old. Well, we did it without it up until the 1950s in the rural areas of Oklahoma. So how? And it was acclimation. Do you ever drive Central Expressway, Dallas? And I just think of that for some reason. You drive down there in August, going to go to Six Flags, go to spend the day in Dallas or something, and there are people out on the highway building it, and they're bent over tying rebar, and they're bent over tying rebar all day long. And you're going to overheat walking around Six Flags with water misters and drinks. And there's somebody back there bending over on a black asphalt tying rebar. Acclimation. That's what you're working on, right? Acclimation. Please read the book Comfort Crisis if you want to know about acclimation. Can you scene size up someone who's acclimated or not?
Yep.
How? Who said? Oh, there you
By
are.
how their body reacts.
Okay. Well, how they're reacting to something that wouldn't necessarily be that serious otherwise. How else can you kind of judge acclimation?
History. Simple history.
History? Their physical condition when you walk in there? Their bed confound? Their wheelchair confound? Are they acclimated to the heat?
Very obese.
Obese? Mobile? Yeah, you got to pick up on that, and then you got to just escalate it up when you recognize something like that. Another book I read, and I highly recommend you read it as well, is a book called 1 Second After. And it's written about an EMP attack, and it shuts the grid down, it shuts all the cars down and everything else. But one of the stories in that book that has really caught my attention was the guy goes to the nursing home to check on his father-in-law. And by the time he gets to the nursing home to check on his father-in-law, because there aren't any vehicles and there's no electricity, the state of the nursing home within hours after the power failure. I have evacuated nursing homes due to flooding. I've moved some patients in nursing homes due to localized electricity failure in the building itself, like a main breaker panel goes down or something. They don't smell real good anyway. Turn the air conditioning off in them. Turn the air conditioning off in them. And we're getting them out of there within hours of that happening. Imagine a day, 2 days, what those places would smell like and be like, and the life support equipment and stuff like that. It'll really cause you to think. So when you go into the nursing home to get somebody out because the power has failed, are they acclimated? No. No. Are they able to do anything about their environment? No. They can't walk outside. They can't go get a drink. They can't go cool off. They're just stuck in that bed. Those are the things I want you to be aware of when you get on scene. And there they are. To grow old is to grow young. We already know this. We lose the mechanisms to cool off. We lose the mechanisms to warm up. If you're not otherwise young and healthy, you're way ahead of the curve, if you will, to go down due to a heat-related illness. And I hate to say it, but we talk about the two-a-day football players. You know, well, that's a healthy individual. That's a young, healthy male athlete. You got to also realize they just came out of the air conditioner from March, April, May, June, July, August. Because we run air conditioners all year round in North Texas, don't we? Some of the hottest moments I've ever felt in my house was on Thanksgiving Day. All the people, all the cooking, turn the air on. It's 70 degrees outside. Still got to turn the air on. So we've already talked about heat cramps. That's the muscle spasms. I don't know why they say that. It's pretty well understood. It's electrolyte imbalance. And then what the test is going to really quiz you about, for a reason, because they really want you to find this in the field. When the body has lost the ability to cool, it's heat stroke. With ability to cool with neurological deficits, it's heat stroke. Billy, be careful. They may say they're dry. They may say they're wet, moist, sweating. That doesn't do it. Obviously, inability to sweat is going to escalate it. But if they're sweating with neurological deficits and a high body temperature, it just means the mechanism is failing. So we're going to classify it as heat stroke. Oh my God, yes. That's one of the things that I was like as a firefighter. I was just always, every time I would have to put all that garb on and go into a fire and come out, I'm like, they can send somebody to the moon and control their atmosphere that they live in from the extremes of outer space, both hot and cold. But I'm going to die going into this fire. Not because of the fire, but because I'm overheating in the garb already.
It's worse when it's the level 8 protective suits, like during hazmat stuff.
Yeah, the totally impervious
Yeah.
hazmat suits to where you're totally encased in it. There are a few departments who are real good about, you got it for 15 minutes, you got to go to rehab for 30. A lot of other departments were like, you run out of an air bottle, let's give you a new air bottle and go in. That's the ones I ended up working for. Keep going until you drop, and that's not a good practice.
Just meaning like they're acclimated patients. So how would you?
Well, you've got that too, because a lot of the firefighters, I hate to be rude. I don't mean to be rude, and I'm not trying to be rude. It just sounds rude sometimes. But some of the students I taught are now firefighters. Students I taught 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago. I see them in the professional role now, like on the side of the road, and run into them at Walmart buying groceries or something. I'm like, you're not acclimated, dude. Damn. Do y'all not do the physical agility anymore? I'm not saying I could do it, but damn, brother, you got big. You know? How do you do this job? Unfortunately, I see that more often than not. And that's kind of sad. Because you're right, Jonah, they're not acclimated, are they? They're not acclimated. And I don't have familiar with what they call bunker gear or structural firefighting gear. But it's got 3 layers. And one of the layers is an impervious layer, so the steam won't come through you. The inner layer is a thermal layer. You know, you think it's hot wearing that coat, take that coat off and see how hot it is. Any of you ever stood by a bonfire, campfire, and you can get really close to it if you got jeans on, but if you got shorts on, you can't get too close? Well, think about how the difference is in firefighting gear. And then you got the outer Nomex fire retardant rip retardant layer. So you got 3 layers at least. And it's miserable in there. Absolutely miserable. And it does not take long. The worst puking I have had from that. How many of you are familiar with the air pack consumption test? Wearing the SCBA on and going as hard as you can until that bottle is totally, past the alarm. The alarm has went off. You got very little air left in the bottle, and you're sucking the bottom out of the bottle. And the hose is just collapsing, and the face mask is just pulled in. And this whole time you've been simulating jabbing a pike pole, climbing stairs, rolling hose, doing all this stuff. You're what, 9, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, depending on how you're feeling, and you're just, and as soon as you get that off, you vomit. And that's, I can remember blacking out and the walls getting real, I saw these walls coming in and I could only see in front of me and these black dots were appearing. I just wanted those heavy ass gloves off. And I couldn't get them off. I couldn't get the gloves off. At the same time, I'm suffocating because it's, and I'm like, oh my God. I'm panicking because I can't get the gloves off. The gloves were more of an issue than this mask, and my instructor pulled the mask off. He said, get you some air. Get the gloves, please get the gloves. I just wanted the damn gloves off. I don't know why. Still to this day, I remember that feeling. Get the gloves off. And I'm like, do we ever have to do this again? He's like, nope, I got your time down. Thank you. In theory, in real life, perfect world, they would record every firefighter's time. And then if you ever went on scene and on a structure fire, they would use that time to say, it's time for Billy to come out. Billy's max is here at 12 and he's been in for 8. Billy needs this much rehab before he goes in again. Now, how many departments are that fully staffed? I know a lot of you are going to go into that role, so it doesn't hurt to talk about it. If you're an EMS only role, you often respond to structure fires for this reason, because firefighters can suffer from the heat, stroke, heat exhaustion, and all that stuff. And then where are they going to go for their rehab? Yeah, they're going to go to EMS for rehab because they don't have the facilities to do it themselves. Have you ever seen Frisco Fire's rehab truck, rehab apparatus? Oh my goodness. It's amazing. And that was 15 years ago when I seen it. I can only imagine what it looks like now. Refrigerators, food, kick-ass air conditioning system, TVs, internet access. You go in there and strip down to your shorts, and it's about like you're dressed right now, Billy, and you rehab in there for a mandatory 30-something minutes. They call your number up, put it all back on, go out there again. It's a lot different than your bottle's out here, here's a new one, go back in. So yeah, Jonah, it sucks. Long story short, it sucks. And these wildfires, and a lot of departments won't buy wildland firefighting gear. They make you go out and just wear your structural firefighting gear and trompsing across 10,000 acres with that shit. It's just not normal. That's not normal. That's not normal. But a lot of departments do it that way. Untreated, they will die. The brain is cooking in a heat stroke environment. So remember that. Is it a life-threatening event? Once the body loses its ability to regulate its temperature, it is life-threatening. Immediate removal from the environment. In Jonah, it's ALS call. It's 100% ALS call. Because if they do get cooled off so quick that they seize, the paramedic can stop the seizure. They may need intubation, depending on how much sedation they're going through or how much brain damage has occurred that it may lose their ability to control their airway or breathe. During vigorous physical activity, well, you mentioned one, firefighting. Closed, poorly ventilated, human space. Fully enclosed structural firefighting gear. Poor ventilation, no air conditioning, structural firefighting. So, and then this one right here, just, I don't know about that. I don't know if we're ever going to eliminate that one. Even with the alarms we have in cars now, ding, 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 ding. And I'm like, what is that car saying? Says we got a kid in the back seat. We don't have any kids. I know there's a book back there. So kind of like the cry wolf syndrome. I think that's just going to start getting ignored too, because it goes off for everything. You can lay that notebook in my wife's car and it'll sound an alarm, but we're not paying attention to it. But it seems, I mean, I can't think of a summer I haven't heard one of these stories. Can you? Another death. Or now it's rescues. People are just popping windows and getting kids out. And now we're doing it for dogs. And, you know, same way with dogs. You can't leave a dog in that hot car. Will you let me say one more case study? And then I'll let you go. Do what?
Do we have a choice?
Do you have a choice?
Not really.
You pay for it.
You paid for it. I don't mean to bore you with stories, but I just tell you the things that you get into in this business that you have to be aware of. Car accidents in the summertime. What are your concerns? Fire. Let's play with this bullet point. Car accident in the summertime. Do the cars shut off? Are you locked in it? By whatever means, you're unconscious, you can't get out. You're trapped, you can't get out. You're injured, you can't get out. Are you sitting in a hot car that's not running in the summertime? How long have you sat there? Depends on your response time. Depends on the amount of time it takes to extricate you. Do your car accident victims in summertime need to be evaluated for heat emergency as much as the injuries that are going along with it? Absolutely. Absolutely. Especially when you have an extended time to arrival. When you're going rural, like you're going from Sherman and you're going to run out to Whitesboro on a car wreck because it's mutual aid. You missed.
That was horrible.
Whitesboro ambulances are tied up, so a Sherman unit's going to respond to Whitesboro for a car accident. And it's on the other side of Whitesboro. Maybe it's up in the Sherwood Shores area. Is it Sherwood Shores? Simmons Shores. Sherwood Shores. I get all the shores messed up. And you get up there and there are two elderly victims in a car accident unconscious. Why are they unconscious? I don't know. But they're really, really hot. They're really hot to the touch. And I know they've been here at least 15 minutes because that's how long it took me to get here. How long before they were found and things like that. So without the story, I'm just telling you, you need to be super, super aware of it. And the worst one I ever responded to was from Van Alstyne. That's where I was stationed, out on 56 west of Sherman. West of Sherman, 6-7 miles. And our ambulances at the time, top speed on those were 65 miles an hour in a van ambulance with minimal air conditioning to begin with. And I had a 2 elderly patient rollover unconscious upon arrival. And I came from Van Alstyne. I couldn't think of anything at the moment more criminal than what I just witnessed. They just laid back there and cooked in that car. I was cooking in an ambulance with marginal air conditioning running down the highway. I can only imagine sitting on the side of the road in the middle of August with no air conditioning running for that amount of time.
Who
Injured.
called it?
Injured.
Yeah.
At the ambulance I worked for had a contract for Van Alstyne and Whitesboro, and Whitesboro was out. And instead of those jackpots calling Sherman for mutual aid, they were so greedy they wouldn't turn a call down and sent me from Van Alstyne. And the whole time I'm on the radio going, we need to call Sherman. We need to call Sherman. We need to call Sherman. Dispatch. Caller is wondering if you're en route. I'm south of Sherman. I'm coming from Van Alstyne. You do realize where you dispatched me from? Going through Sherman looking at fire stations going, why are we doing this? Getting on scene, getting my 2 critical injured unconscious people in a van ambulance by myself. And Tom Brown, Chief Brown, who's now down at Anna, who was retired from Sherman,
Oh, yeah.
as EMS captain, was my EMT driver. And we're in the back managing 2 unconscious elderly patients. And the radio's squawking. Medic whatever. What did they want? He's, I don't know, I better answer him. He's going to be mad. It was our supervisor. As soon as you clear scene, we have a transfer holding.
Was it the drill thing? Did you leave after that?
Mm-hmm. It wasn't the draw for me. The next time it happened, I called. It was a guy who called for chest pain in Pottsboro. And we're stationed in Sherman. And I'm like, this is a 911 call. We do transfers. So I called Preston EMS directly, and I'm like, we have a call for such and such at this address. And they're like, oh, that's Mr. Whoever. We run on him all the time. That's just across the street from the station. We'll be right there. So the next morning, I got called into the office and said, you don't shuck calls. And I said, what are you talking about? Like, you gave a call up. You got called, and you gave it to somebody else. I said, yeah, it was a 911 call. He said, we don't do that here. I said, I don't do that here. Bye. I'm done. I've had enough. You can't just leave us. You didn't give a 2 weeks notice. You're not going to get full pay for today. I don't care. I'm not working for somebody that's putting me in jeopardy and ultimately the patient's in jeopardy. There are still services that way, guys. And that's the sad part about our business. There are still services ran that way. Even in municipalities, not private, they're still ran that way. EMS is the stepchild of the fire service. EMS is the stepchild of city budgets. The word problems ends in EMS, and that's what all city managers, fire chief, and everything look at. You've been warned. So, congratulations on your career choice. It can be good. And all of you are worthy to work in a place that will treat you with respect. Plano, Frisco, Richardson, Allen, McKinney, things like that. Sherman Denison. But these less thans, I'm not afraid to say it. I don't care. Don't work for those places. You're better than that.